From the people who help you know your competition, InteliChek presents the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast. The Multi-Point Inspection Podcast brings you news and stories from the automotive world told in an informative and entertaining way. In the dimly lit corner of an automobile dealership, where the aroma of engine oil lingered in the air, a young man embarked on an extraordinary journey that would forever shape his perspective on leadership. This is where my story began, as an apprentice technician, with a past overshadowed by homelessness and adversity. The world had seemingly turned its back on me, leaving me with nothing but determination and a burning desire to prove myself. Days and nights blurred together as I fought tooth and nail to survive. Mowing lawns, sifting through dumpsters for recyclables such as glass bottles, cardboard, and aluminum cans. I did whatever it took to scrape by. Rejection became my constant companion, each closed door fueling the fire within me. Yet, amid the struggle, a flicker of hope remained, guiding me toward a path that would transform my life and the lives of others. When I finally secured a job at that dealership, I found myself facing a seemingly insurmountable challenge. I had no formal training, no expertise to rely on, and the weight of expectations bore down upon me. Every task felt like an uphill battle, an overwhelming mountain to climb. It was in this crucible of uncertainty that the essence of Mile 1 was born, a philosophy that would become my guiding light. I realized that if I could break down each task, each responsibility into manageable steps, they became attainable. By simplifying complex goals and visions into actionable items, I discovered the power of Mile 1, my next step, the next mile on the endless journey to effective leadership. Though I did not yet have a name for this approach, its impact was undeniable. Mile 1 became the catalyst for my personal transformation, as I proved time and again that with the right mindset and perseverance, anything could be achieved.
Hello, I'm Ed Roberts, COO of Bozard Ford-Lincoln and author of Mile 1, An Endless Journey to Effective Leadership. What you see on television in a lot of cases, police comes in and they knock the door down and they bombard the place with 35 officers all at one time. There's a lot of stuff on television that's not realistic. That is very realistic. When they come in to get someone that is high on their list, they'll do whatever it takes to do it. And they'll do it in numbers to protect themselves. And living in that world, you watch it happen time after time again, happening to your siblings and my father, never my mother. But then you look out the window and you see it happening across the street and you see it happening next door. And it's the world you live in, so you just think it's normal. But there was a moment, probably about the 8th or 10th time that I've seen them come into our home, that I thought, those are people too. And they're obviously living a different life than we are because they're coming to get these guys. And so there has to be a different world out there. And that was before I separated myself. I was living in that world and that's all I knew. And I just made a decision that I'm going to go out and see what's out there.
Have faith. Have faith. Believe in your source. Have faith. Have faith.
So from a first job standpoint, I stumbled into the car business, as a lot of us do in this industry. The ones that stick in it anyway, we kind of stumble into it and think, okay, well, this is a good place for me to land. And same here. I grew up very humble, and my family was very much into crime and prostitution and drugs and whatever else they could do to gain money without having to go out and earn it. And I was fortunate for whatever reason, can't really put my finger on why, but chose that I did not want to go down that path and remove myself from them, and was homeless for a good period of time, but still communicated very frequently with them. And during that time, I was doing whatever I could to earn a living legally. So I was digging in dumpsters and getting anything out that may have some kind of value. We all throw stuff away that can be recycled, can be whatever. So the main things I was getting was cardboard, aluminum cans, glass bottles. All that stuff has a return and is capable of being recycled. And if you hit the right places, you can certainly get as much as you need to survive. And that's what I was doing, but decided that I wanted to try to do something different. And I went to a job fair and ended up meeting a fixed ops director at a Ford store in Jacksonville, Florida. He told me to come by and see him, and I did. And he interviewed me, and I'm sure I looked like a hoodlum, smelled like a hoodlum, sounded like a hoodlum, but he felt like, I'll give you a chance. And if I knew now what I knew then, a lot of times in most dealers, you're just trying to find people. If they'd want to work, and you'd give them a chance and hope that they stick. And maybe that was the case with him, I don't know. But he offered me a job. And that was huge to me. And he asked me if I had tools. I told him that I did, but I did not. But what I could do is I knew that I could go out and find a way to get some tools, and ended up picking up about $400 worth of recyclables that weekend, and turned it in, went to Sears, bought $400 worth of tools, and showed up there that Monday to go to work. And he had told me previously, he said, I won't be here next week, so you have to come in and see my assistant, but I'll tell him you're coming. And I went in and seen his assistant on that Monday, and he would not put me to work. And he judged a book by its cover, ultimately. And you can't blame him. In those situations, you got to make a judgment call, and he's probably thinking, what was Conrad thinking when he offered this guy a job? But my family had told me leading up to that you're not cut out for that. You're not one of those people. We're not contributors to society from that standpoint. And I refuse to believe that. And now I go out in the real world, and someone essentially tells me that hey, and there's no place for you here. And I told him, Conrad's already hired me. And he says, I'm sorry, there's no place for you. So I left there and set out at the traffic light, and I said, I can turn left and take the stuff back to Sears and go back home and tell them it was right, or I can turn right. That guy was willing to give me a chance. Maybe I can find somebody else that will. And turned right, said, let's go try it and see what happens. What's it going to hurt? And turned into the next car dealership that I came into, and happened to be another Ford store about 5 miles down the road, and went in there. And the car dealer world everybody's very competitive with each other. And he said, well, if he'd give you a job, I'll give you a job. So he hired me at about half the money what the other place was going to hire me. But that didn't matter. What mattered was he was giving me a chance. And he gave me a chance. And I determined in my mind, I didn't care how hard I was working or how hard I would have to work. I would find the hardest worker in that store and outwork them. And that's what I have done throughout my career. And it has opened doors for me to go to work for the manufacturer. I've worked for Ford Motor Company. I've been very blessed along the way. But ultimately, it all starts with that guy giving me a chance back at that car dealer in 1992. And the book that I wrote, Mile One, I dedicated the book to him because my life would have certainly been different. I could have been just another statistic if he wouldn't have gave me that chance, because I don't know how many times I would have accepted the no before I finally caved.
And there have been many Mile Ones for Ed since those days as a tech apprentice, as he is now COO of one of the most impressive dealerships in the country.
Man, Bozard Ford is a fun story to talk about. I got here 11 years ago, and we're a small town. We're in St. Augustine, Florida. It's the oldest city in America, and it's still a hidden jewel. We are a tourist town, but not from the levels of what you would think. And at the time when I got here, there was 14,000 people that lived in St. Augustine. We're now getting close to 20,000. I don't remember how many was in the county, but now we're at about 200 in the county. And we was a small town store in a small town. It just fit. I was the 43rd employee that started here in September of 2012. Coming out of the recession, coming out of all that stuff, things are starting to come together. But even going into that, it was a 40-employee store. It was just a small town dealer in a small town. And we've changed the mindset of what the store is and turned as many people into opportunists as we could. And if you fast forward 11 years, and now last month, we was the number one Ford store in the state. And usually the number one Ford store in the state is usually the number one in the country. And we beat that store out. We ended up 7th in the country. We're 11th in the country year to date. We should finish in the top 10. In a small town. There's nothing metro about St. Augustine. We now have 338 employees here, and we are very ambitious on where we can be and where we're going. And we're the number one service center for Ford in the country, number one quick lane for Ford in the country. We just continue to ring the bell, and we don't hang our hat on any of it. It's all, what's our next opportunity? What's our next opportunity? How can we continue to get better? Because if we go into it with the mindset of good is never good enough, we always have opportunity in front of us. Then we're always looking for how can we be better than what we was yesterday, a better version of ourselves today than we was yesterday.
And not only has Ed Roberts and his team helped to grow Bozard Ford-Lincoln exponentially, They have also bridged the generational divide.
So a lot of people would say, and I hate that I keep elaborating on things, but I think it's important for the audience to hear that we have a tough time with getting the younger generations to work, and you can't get millennials to do anything, and certainly Zs aren't any better. Well, our store is built on those. 65% of our technicians are 30 or less, but more so than that, and that's very unheard of in the domestic world. You see some of that in the import world, but not necessarily in the domestic world. But more so than that, let's look at the entire store. 60% of all of the employees here are millennials or younger, and we absolutely rock. You say millennials don't do that or Gen Zs don't do that. Look at Chick-fil-A. We all look at Chick-fil-A and hold them in a high regard, and that's all they have as well.
And then there's the matter of employee retention.
So I guess I need to brag on Bozard a little bit more because we buck the trend in a lot of ways. We buck the trend with the age demographics that we just talked about, and we buck the trend for turnover from not just the automobile industry, but from any industry. And last year we had 2% turnover. This year we're going to end up about 3.5%. And the automobile industry, from a retail standpoint, so the dealership world, runs at about 47% annually across the nation. And we certainly buck that trend. And that is by connecting with people, and that's by allowing them to be the better versions of themselves. And when you do that, they become very loyal to you because they want to be better tomorrow than they was yesterday or today. So we have become a destination for a lot of stores to come through and evaluate our culture and see some of the things that they could take back. And we've had dealers from China come in here and all different manufacturers and certainly a lot of Ford stores as well. And then manufacturer executives, and not just with Ford, but across the board, Toyota and Nissan and certainly Ford come in. And how are you guys bucking that trend at such a dramatic rate? And that kind of led to, well, it didn't lead to, but other people have pushed me for years to write a book. You should write a book about your story, how you got in this. And as you know, there's elements of my story there, but I didn't write the book about my story. So I started taking notes years ago, but when all these people are coming in on a regular basis and saying, hey, you should write a book, this is things that you can take out. And my answer to them always was, this isn't just for the car industry. This could be for any industry. And then finally, I was reading a friend of mine's book. I was actually listening to it. And that was the final piece that pushed me over the edge. It wasn't what got me there, but it was the final little element, little straw that pushed me over the edge. I said, he's touching a lot of good points, and I think we can help complement some of the stuff that he's talking about. So I pushed pause on it, picked up my cell phone, called him, and said, Clint, you've pushed me over the edge. I'm writing a book. And that was late last year, and took most of this year to take those notes that I've made over the last several years. And writing a book is not easy. You start with a draft. You get people to read it, give their feedback. Some of it is opinion. Some of it is, hey, the valid feedback. And you got to put all that together. But one of the things I really wanted to focus on was, let's try to take the car business out of this as much as possible, because I wanted it to be an element that could be used anywhere. And I stumbled into the car business, but I would like to think that I would have became the same person if I would have ended up in healthcare. And so I wanted to write it in that format to where it could be utilized in other industries. And the book is really to show you that we may be thinking that we're pulling the best out of our people, but really are we? How much more opportunity do we have to pull the best out of our people?
We'll do a deep dive into Mile 1, an endless journey to effective leadership, after a word from our sponsor. Perception is not always reality.
And, there's this perception that the dealerships are more expensive for everything. And InteliChek kind of confirms that that's not the case.
InteliChek helps dealerships become aware of where their prices stand in regard to their competitors.
And InteliChek does a good job of giving us that pricing data to confirm that we're in the market.
And this allows dealerships to make their customers aware of their competitive pricing.
I placed 2 placards in the business center so they could see that while they're over there working on computers. Also placed it in our coffee area. We have a glass wall there, so when they walk in, as they're putting their creamer and sugar in their coffee, they're going to look up and see the pricing for our pricing as well as our competitors.
Introducing InteliShare. InteliShare contains all of InteliChek's promotional tools that you can use to promote your favorable prices, including InteliAds, the printable flyers that you can show off in easel displays, InteliMedia for your digital media boards, and InteliWidgets, so you can show off price comparisons on your website and even let your customers schedule from the widget.
Just having access to that data that they're able to provide gives us a good plan of how we're going to proceed.
Call 877-827-7273 or go to InteliChek.com to find out more about how the InteliShare Series can help you grow your business.
So Mal1 is an element of what I started to use when I first got in the business. I didn't have any formal training, didn't know how to fix a car, and here I am a tech apprentice. But what I did know how to do is take my next step to get somewhere. So way back then, it was not called Mal1. That title or name came along probably in the last decade, but it was breaking things down into steps that I could see visual that I could achieve. And a lot of us struggle with seeing something that's not yet there. And that's what this is about. It's like running a marathon. A marathon is 26.3 miles or something like that. And when you start that marathon, you can't see that last mile. You can't see mile number 26. And at about mile number 14, you're asking yourself, why am I doing this? But if you step back and you say, all right, my next step is that next mile. And then after we complete that one, my next step is again that next mile. And then again. And so that's what Mal1 is. Mal1 is breaking things down into what's next. What is my next step? And there is no Mal2. There is no plan B. It is what's the next thing I need to be working on. That's what I need to conquer. When I'm done with that, it's a clean sheet. What's the next thing I need to be working on? In any industry or any business, it's not about what we did yesterday. So it's not about the Mal1 or Mal 63 back there. It's about what are we doing today? And so it's breaking it down into visual steps to where you can see in your mind completing them. And before you know it, you completed whatever you're trying to conquer.
Chapter 4, Counseling versus Coaching. Leadership encompasses more than simply guiding teams. It entails nurturing the growth and development of individual team members. Two powerful approaches that aid in this process are coaching and counseling.
Leading people is a lot like parenting. We encourage our kids, but we tell our people what to do. And so we got to shift to where we're encouraging as well. I mean, we all know good coaches out there, Nick Saban and Bill Belichick and some of the greats, Vince Lombardi. And they didn't get to where they are by telling everybody what they did wrong. And that's a lot of times what we do in business is we counsel someone with all the things they did wrong. If you do that again, you won't work here. Well, what we're leaving out when we do that is they did it the only way they know how. And you just told them to not do it that way again or they won't work there. But you didn't tell them how to do it differently. And so they have one of two choices. They can go out and do the exact same thing because it's the only way they know how to do it, or not do it at all. Both is going to get them in trouble again and cause more counseling and really at some point lead to dismissal. Whereas if we flip that to a coaching standpoint and we say, hey, let's look at this differently. We can't do it this way anymore. Let me give you a different path on how to do it. Let's chase this. And if you need me, hit me up. I'll be glad to guide you through it the first time or maybe the second time or maybe the third, but at some point. And now we're showing them a different way rather than just pointing out what they did wrong. And it is an example I gave in the book, and I'll say here as well. It's like teaching our kid how to ride a bicycle. If they go over and they fall off their bike and they skin their knee and they start crying, we don't run up to them and start yelling at them. I told you not to do it that way. Da, 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 da. No, we go over and brush them off, make sure they're okay, give them a hug and say, hey, we'll get this. We're going to get through it. We're going to learn. We're going to figure it out. And if we shift our mind to doing that with our people, we're going to give them a different path. Once they stop crying, we can tell them what they did wrong, what caused that to happen, and help them get back on that seat again and go do it, rather than scare them to the point to where they feel like they're going to lose their job because they don't know any other way to do it. And now you just got done yelling at them, so there's no way they're going to come ask you to help them with it. It's opening the door to being supportive rather than being directive.
Chapter 6, Motivation versus Inspiration. In the world of leadership, the ability to inspire and motivate others lies at the heart of creating lasting impact and driving extraordinary results. While motivation and inspiration may seem like interchangeable concepts, they possess distinct qualities that shape our approach to leading and influencing others.
If we're trying to reach a goal, we can go out and give everybody a bonus. Say, hey, I'll give you this bonus if we get to this. That's motivation. Motivation usually costs money. It usually costs something. But inspiration is giving the vision. Here's where we want to be. Here's how we can get there. And here's how you can contribute to it. When you do it from that standpoint, the motivation comes automatic. And they want to be a part of that end vision. So they want to help you get there. So we're inspiring them to do the task at hand or to excel at what we're trying to excel at, rather than just paying them. Because now if we do the costly element of I'll give you this bonus if we can get here, then guess what you got to do to get past that the next time? The same thing all over again. And that gets expensive, and it also entitles our people. It tells them, hey, as soon as he throws out that bonus, I'll chase it again. And we got to talk about it from more of a big picture standpoint. We got to really express the vision and inspire them on how they play a part in that bigger vision. And when they do that, they want to be a part of it.
Chapter 10, Leveraging Strengths. In the realm of leadership, one of the fundamental responsibilities is to harness the collective talents and abilities of a team. The art of strength-based delegation, when executed effectively, can be the catalyst for both individual and organizational growth. By recognizing and leveraging the strengths of each team member, leaders can create an environment where weaknesses fade and everyone thrives through continuous learning and development.
We are wired as humans to defend ourselves. So anything that has any kind of negative connotation to it, we kind of have a defense mechanism to it. It's kind of like pulled into a dark parking lot, and we're nervous about all the noises that are made. But if we pull in there in the sunlight and all those same noises are there, it doesn't alarm us at all. We're wired to be defensive. So we quickly look at what people do wrong. We quickly look at it and we don't necessarily help them get better at those things. Nobody's good at anything. And initially, they have to work their way to it. Tom Brady didn't get to be the quarterback that he was for so many years just by saying, hey, I'm going to go play football. He had to work on some of the things that he wasn't necessarily the best at. And, obviously he was seventh round pick in the draft when he originally came in. He wasn't what everybody thought he needed to be, but what he never did is he never gave up and he never quit. And anytime we have a weakness or something that we're not necessarily good at, I add in the word yet. We're not good at it yet. It's an opportunity for us to get better. And when we focus on it from that standpoint, they're more open rather than avoiding the weakness. They say, hey, I can get better at that. I can get better at that, because we try to push away from the things that we don't do good at. And think about that from a household standpoint. There's things that we don't necessarily do around the house, and we expect our spouse to do it because it's something that they're better at than we are. Well, if they wasn't there, you still have to do them anyway. And it may take you more time to do it. So you're still capable. You're just not good at it yet. And when we chase it as weaknesses or opportunities to get better, and that's the constant that we talk about, then we all have opportunities. And we already know the things that we're good at, and we continue to hone those skills, but we hone the skills of what we have the most growth opportunity in more so. So another thing to tie that back to a sports analogy is, although Tom Brady played in NFL for over 20 years, there was never a time that he didn't practice before a game. He's played for 20-something years, and he knows the players inside out. Why would he need to continue to practice? Because he still had opportunity, and he was always honing those opportunities to make him who he is today, or who he was as he was heading out, and to go win Super Bowls with two different teams. So if we identify what the things that our team are not good at, and we help them or we guide them, sometimes they quickly become good at them, because now they're able to face the things that they've avoided for so long. And once they see that they can conquer those things, they will push that much harder to make themselves better at it once you get them rolling down that path. Rather than avoiding it, now they're embracing it. Another impactful chapter that we'll leave the audience with is busy versus effective. A lot of times we make ourselves very busy because we feel like we need to be. But if we slow down and ask ourselves, am I really getting something accomplished? You'd be surprised at your answers there. So we'll dangle that carrot for the audience. Every one of the practices in there, as you read them, you think, man, that makes sense. And that is very simple. But simple does not mean easy. You're exactly right, Brandon. It requires a lot of intentionality, and it requires a lot of self-reflection, because a lot of times we're pulled to negative, we're pulled to defend ourselves. It's the same thing there. We want to defend. We want to react to something that's not going the way we need it to. And we got to be very intentional to pull ourselves back, take a deep breath. Let me show you how you can do it differently.
I'd like to thank Ed Roberts, the author of Mile 1, An Endless Journey to Effective Leadership, for a peek into this most inspirational book. You can find the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps with the algorithm thingy. Executive producers for the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast are Melissa Marlette and Joe Gibson. It is written, produced, and narrated by me, Brandon Barnett. This episode's featured music is I Found My Home by Lone Canyon. InteliChek. Know your competition.